Let's start with the quarterback position. Let's start with Josh. Josh, what grade are you giving our quarterback room?
Yeah. Okay. Sorry, I thought I was muted. So this one was I was torn. I originally went a lot worse, and then overcorrected myself, ironically enough, and made it a little better. And then I kind of settled somewhere in the middle. So for my quarterbacks, for the quarterbacks on the season, I took into account injuries. I took into account poor play by backups. I gave them a C plus. Right. The reason I kind of went smack dab in the middle is because when Tua was in there, you saw a difference in kind of the play of the entire offense, right? Um, but when the backups were in there, it was atrocious outside of the Cleveland game when Tyler Huntley turned into Peyton Manning, you know?
Peyton Manning never ran that fast. I'm just saying. Anthony, what grade are you giving the quarterbacks?
I gave the quarterbacks a D. I went a little bit lower than Josh here. I think that availability is the best. What is it again? Whatever that saying is.
Availability, or the best ability is availability.
There you go. That saying that we quote a lot, even though I always forget the quote. Yeah. So I think that is a strike against Tua, and I will talk specifically a little more about that later. But yeah, the quarterbacks in general was just a really, really bad room to watch this year. Even when Tua came back, I think he dropped 2 games straight before finally picking up his first win. Didn't look particularly good against the Jaguars before going out. I think he had a lot of rust that he was kicking off when the beginning of his season, let's say, because it was week 1 and then missed quite a bit. And then, the rest of the crew was just bad. There's really no other way to put what we saw from the Skylar Thompson, Tim Boyle, Tyler Huntley trio of torture. They just didn't play good football. They didn't play like NFL players. And quite frankly, I'm a little confused as to how they're in the NFL, to be honest. Perhaps it's just our offense is a little too confusing for them. I don't know. But did I even mention Mike White? I forgot Mike White. There was another one in there, if you can believe it. We've had a lot of quarterbacks.
You could have forgot him. We would have understood.
Yeah, so a D. Nothing really super positive to say about this room. Tua did have some really good plays. That's why it wasn't an F, because Tua did have some really good games. But it wasn't enough for me to elevate it beyond the D mark.
All right, Keith, what grade are you giving the quarterbacks?
Yeah, I kind of fall in between Anthony and Josh. I gave it a D plus. You have Tua. Tua played well at times. There were times where we praised him a couple of times after certain games where we said, I've never seen him more efficient. I've never seen him, scramble and make plays better than this. So, Tua, there was an evolution in Tua's game this year. Problem is, we didn't see enough of it. We didn't see it during the Texans game when he threw some bad interceptions. Some of that might have been on wrong routes. Some of that might have been on other extenuating circumstances. But the bottom line is, I agree with Anthony. The best ability is availability. And Tua still, to this point, hasn't learned how to protect himself. And that's the biggest thing. Tyler Huntley didn't play well. Tim Boyle didn't play well. Skylar Thompson didn't, they're backup quarterbacks. They're backup quarterbacks for a reason. We needed Tua to stay healthy in order to have a shot this season, and he didn't do it. He got concussed again, and then on a scramble where he was trying to make a play, I understand it, but he hurt his hip and missed the last 2 games of the season. Last 2 games, last 3 games, last 2 games. Last 3. Yeah. So, yet again, we're talking about how Tua couldn't stay on the field. And if we're having this same conversation next year, we're having a conversation much more seriously about whether or not we should move on from him. And this is a conversation we're probably going to have this off season too. But we're probably going to have it a lot more seriously if Tua misses more times next season. Can't be having it, man.
I will say this though: the reason my grade might be a little higher is because we finally got rid of Skylar Thompson, who's now a Pittsburgh problem.
Yeah,
they got a lot of quarterback.
That went up a whole letter grade just because of that move.
Yeah. So that's my grade for the quarterbacks, man. Might seem a little harsh. I don't care. Stay on the damn field to it.
What were the grades again, guys? So I had
I had a D plus.
D plus. Keith coming in hot with the plus.
C plus for me.
All right. And Taylor, you didn't tell us yet, so
Nope, I am holding off. I gave the QB room a C minus. I think you guys hit nail on the head when it comes to Tua. I think he played very well from his return game against Arizona until that game against Houston. And to take it a step further, during this time period, I do think he's arguably played some of the best football of his entire career.
Yeah.
The problem is, it's exactly what you guys said. He just isn't available, and he needs to be available. And this isn't a thing where he's on his rookie contract, and we're like, well, maybe next year. You're at the point now where you're getting paid, man. You got the big contract.
Yep.
You have got to be there. You got to be the CEO. I love what I'm seeing whenever he's on the field. I love the leadership qualities that he possesses. All that is great, but none of it means anything if he's not on the field playing in December for us. And outside of that, Tyler Huntley, I think I'm higher on Tyler Huntley than a lot of people on the panel here. I do think he played his best and put out a lot of effort as the QB2, especially against the Browns, and the Jets game was bad, but you can still see progression in his time in the system. Unfortunately, though, this grade is really bogged down by Skylar Thompson and Tim Boyle, who are just atrocious quarterbacks.
Not NFL, not even college level quarterbacks, in my opinion.
They were just absolutely awful. What bothered me so much, and not to fully get back into our conversation from earlier when talking about the NFL news, it was kind of similar to what I was saying with Sam Darnold in the playoff game, to where Sam Darnold was just kind of like scared to throw and he was taking sacks. That was Skylar Thompson the entirety of this season when he was on the field.
Mm-hmm.
And it was so frustrating. I could mind a quarterback being bad throwing picks. It's so much worse seeing a quarterback who's just scared to throw. So that is my grade for the QB position. Josh, you want to go ahead and tell us your grade for the running back position?
Yes. So I have a C plus for the running back position. That's 2 C pluses in a row. Now, this would have been a lot worse if it weren't for Devon Achane, right? I think Devon Achane was arguably, well, maybe not so arguably, the number one offensive player on this team. I mean, and I'm not even sure it was close. He was our offense in 65, 70% of the games this year. From a receiving standpoint, from a rushing standpoint. I mean, he had 907 rushing yards and 6 touchdowns. He had 35 receptions for 324 yards. And I think he had 2 or 3 receiving touchdowns. I mean, he was everywhere. He had 1,231 total scrimmage yards. I mean, that man was playing like a man possessed, and would have had over 1,000 yards and probably close to 500 yards if it weren't for all of the holding and penalties that pulled back a lot of his big plays. So, I mean, outstanding. I started off as a B minus, but the play of Mostert, Wilson, and the lack of opportunity for Jalen Wright, which led to limited production, really kind of drug it back down from a B minus to a C plus.
Anthony, what about you?
Yeah, for the running back room, I gave them a B, actually. I thought that Devon Achane and oh my God, how do I forget the fullback's name?
Alec Ingold.
Alec Ingold, thank you. Devon Achane and Alec Ingold, I thought played well enough to lift up the score here for this one. Achane 1,500 yards and 8 touchdowns or 9 touchdowns, whatever it was, is absolutely magnificent. Ingold, he missed like 2 or 3 games, and we were really feeling it. Now, we never really got back on track after Austin Jackson went out, but I thought Ingold was just so good at his job. Like as a lead blocker, hitting the hole, taking out the linebacker, he did it perfectly. I don't know how fullbacks get voted to the Pro Bowl, but he didn't, sadly, and I think he really deserved it. Jalen Wright, I didn't see enough from. Mostert had signs of flashes of greatness that we saw last year, but overall had a very disappointing season with the fumbles, getting taken out, all that jazz. And Jeff Wilson Jr. was on a milk carton for most of the season. So I think that's how I landed at a B. Just kind of, it wasn't great, but it wasn't. I think it was still above average.
Okay, let me. Sorry, and I don't mean to chime in here. If we're combining fullbacks and running backs, because I separated them, my grade
Mhm.
averages out to a B minus. Sorry.
Oh, yeah, I wasn't sure if we're separating them or not.
Nope.
Yeah,
Let's go with we're not. So
Yeah.
B minus for me for the running backs. Then I apologize, fellas.
Oh, good man. Keith, what's your grade for the running back? and fullback?
I have a B minus as well. Combining fullbacks and running backs. What can't be forgotten here is that Raheem Mostert had two huge fumbles in two separate games that probably cost us those games. That fumble against the Bills game made me want to jump off a friggin' bridge, and that fumble in the Colts game was equally. And Alec Ingold, had a fumble in that one as well. Devon Achane, awesome. He was awesome all year long. He was rock steady for us. We need a power option to go along with Devon Achane. We need a power option so badly. We need a Chris Brooks, if you will, to go along with Devon Achane. That's not Devon Achane's fault. But the running back room does take a hit because Raheem Mostert, as great as he was in 2023, he was not great in 2024. He looked every bit of that 31, 32 years old that he is now. Alec Ingold, again, big fumble. Jalen Wright showed flashes, but for the vast majority of the year, he was kind of unexplosive, didn't show a lot of vision. Want to see him get coached up this offseason. So without Devon Achane, we're talking about like a D minus F type of grade here. With Devon Achane, he brings him up to a B minus because he was really good all year long.
I'm going to give this room a C. And Devon Achane is the only reason I think I'm not giving this a D plus. He had nearly 1,500 yards from scrimmage, and he did miss a game. He went out with a concussion against, I think it was the Patriots. Alec Ingold, you guys talked about the injuries and how our offense suffered. And honestly, when he came back, it was still a thing where I don't know. There was just something off about him this entire season. Um, Raheem Mostert, there's a lot to be said about his season, whether that be his age or the scheme just not being a thing where he fits in for some reason. I did have a major issue with this possibly being his last game ever, or at least with the Dolphins, and he got a handful of carries against the Jets when we really could have used some fresh legs in there. Jeff Wilson Jr. I don't know who said it, but somebody said he was on a milk carton. That was a perfect way to describe him. He was absent the entire season. And Jalen Wright, you guys were higher on him than I was. I kind of was pretty disappointed. Aside from a few carries and a few good games, uh, against New England, he had 13 carries for 86, and against Indy, he had 5 carries for 33. Aside from that, he just didn't really do a whole lot with the carries he had.
I'll add some
So that's
context to that if you don't mind.
no, go ahead.
I think largely my grade was a little looser on him because he's a 4th-round rookie. I didn't expect to play this year. I thought
That's
that
fair.
Mostert was going to return to form, and Achane was going to take a step up, and Jeff Wilson was going to be involved. So I approached it from the perspective that I didn't expect anything from him, and I got something from him.
Yeah.
I will say
And-
this though. I bet you they regretted letting Chris Brooks go, who was one of my main crushes on this team.
For Salvin Ahmed, who they ended up cutting
Yeah.
just shortly after.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, they ended up cutting Ahmed anyways. And I'm not saying Wright is a bust, by the way. It's just that his rookie season, considering like my personal expectations for him, because I was very high on him coming out of Tennessee, it was really high.
If you go
And
back and watch some of the film on him, he missed some holes, which you expect from a rookie. That's fine. But
you want to see progression there in year 2, and we'll see. I'm not opposed also to the Dolphins getting another running back, whether that be a power back or somebody to eventually be the RB1, so Achane could do more wide receiver stuff. But that's a conversation for another day. I want to now get into the wide receivers. Josh, I'm very excited to hear your grade for wide receivers, man.
Yeah.
Go off.
So mine was a C minus for them. You know, Tyreek Hill, 81 receptions, 959 yards, 6 tuds. Jalen Waddle, 750 yards, 744, 2 tuds. Malik Washington was probably the shining star of this room, even though he only had 223 yards. I thought he had all of those in like 4 games. This was just a disappointment across the board. I think every single player, I mean, we have close to 40 something $1 million between 2 players who are averaging 30, 40 yards a game. I mean, it's just something that it can't happen. And now arguments can be made. Well, the coaches are the ones that, Mike McDaniel's the one that drew up the schemes. He's the one that called the plays, which were 90% screens and bubbles and 2-yard ends. So what are they supposed to do? Okay, great. Well, but Tyreek Hill also dropped like 15 touchdowns this year. Jalen Waddle, for some reason, still cannot figure out how to keep his feet on the ground when a ball is coming at him, which infuriates me, because if he would just learn to do that, he would have so much more yards after contact.
Do you think when Jalen's playing catch with his like little kids that he jumps up to catch the ball when they throw
Always.
it to him? Yeah, okay.
I just think that's what he does.
I don't think I've ever seen Jalen Waddle catch a ball with his hands. It's always the body catch. Too.
Yeah, he jumps and he does this, and
Yeah.
and in the few times, and I know Taylor, you were joking, but the few times that he does catch it outside of his body in stride, and we all know Tua can throw the ball. He puts it where it's supposed to.
Yeah.
If Waddle would just keep his damn feet on the ground, he would have probably mirrored Hill's season this year for the limited production that he had. I don't know. It was just bad all around. C- for me. You have players like River Crickcraft who I'm a fan of, but can't stay healthy. D. Eskridge, okay, what did you expect from him? Hopefully nothing, because he was a special teamer. Grant Dubose, prayers out to his recovery, but he's a blocker. Okay, bye. And Robbie Chosen, bye. So C- for me. Excuse me.
Anthony, what about you?
Yeah, I actually just literally shifted mine down to a D after hearing Josh talk about it and realizing to myself, why did I give them a C? So I downgraded them to a D. The Odell Beckham Jr. experiment was an absolute failure, which I actually called in the preseason. So listen to us this preseason. I'll tell you who's going to be bad. And our 2 stud wide receivers were not even average this year. They were below average. If Jonnu was in this group, which he's not, they may have actually had a prayer, but they don't, because none of them did anything. It was a crap season for a crap group of wide receivers. Malik Washington coming on at the end of the season was the only bright spot for me.
Yeah, I mean, here's food for thought, guys. Ready for this? Tyreek Hill, who made 30-something million or whatever it was this year, 959 yards. Jonnu Smith, 884 yards. There needs to be a 1 in front of Tyreek Hill's number.
Making the vet minimum probably for Jonnu, too.
So, I mean, it's just a failure all around.
Keith, what about you?
I gave it a D+. Problem is, this offense was built to have the wide receivers cook. And if your wide receivers aren't cooking, then this offense is going to struggle. And that's largely what we saw all season. We saw Tyreek Hill struggle with, his wrist injury and his ankle injury. And I appreciate that he played injured for the Dolphins this season. I do. I appreciate it. But your wrist injury caused you to run the wrong route on 2 of Tua's interceptions against Houston. Jalen Waddle, wasn't really injured all year, but dude was the invisible man. We were talking about it before the show started. He was my 4th round pick in fantasy. And this isn't me being salty because he was my 4th round pick, but he was a complete bust. He was a complete bust. Towards the end of the season, he was a guy that I couldn't even put in the starting lineup. Again, this offense is predicated on its wide receivers going off and cooking. And when they aren't doing that, this offense is going to struggle. This offense is going to suffer. And that's largely what we saw all season long.
One of them was cooking up babies.
Yeah, true.
But not
Very
plays
true.
on the field.
I think y'all hit nail on the head when it comes to a lot of the struggles with the wide receiver room. I ended up giving it a D+. There's not really a whole lot to honestly say about this room. Tyreek Hill, he had a bad season. I didn't like his route running this year, and his drops and big moments continued. This is something that has been a thing for him over the last 2 seasons, especially with the team. And I just cannot get that moment. Josh, you brought it up earlier. Third quarter against the Jets. Now the team knows at this point that the Broncos are going to win that game. And then Jalen Waddle goes, Cheetah, are you in? Are you out? Yep, I'm out. And I can't forget that moment, man. It's just I understand you're injured, but there's something to be said about this offseason about players that are playing for the team. You know, when you still had a chance to end the season right, how about we beat a division rival? Let's prove that this is working. And instead it was, no, I'm good. And that was just very disappointing. Waddle, I said this to you guys in the pre-show. He's good for his 4 catches, 40 yards per game, which I'm not saying that just to be a-hole about it, but he had a decent-ish season. He also struggled with injuries, and that's something that really plagued this room. Blake Washington, again, was the star of this room. He absolutely shined. He was doing the dirty work. He was basically the wide receiver 2 on this team for a majority of the season, and I thought he did a great job. Other than the Green Bay game, which I'd argue he really put us on a bad spot to start with a fumbled punt, or was it a punt return? I think it was a punt return.
I don't remember.
But anyways, aside from Washington, you had Grant DeBose, you had Braxton Berrios, who got hurt early in the season. Nobody really shined, and that's why when you see a name like Wes Welker being let go, it is a bit surprising. But when you stop to think about it, you're like, well, yeah, nobody from the wide receiver room the past 2 seasons have really progressed in any kind of way. I love Wes Welker, but it is what it is. You can't preach accountability and be fine when nothing gets better. But let's get into the tight ends. I know what everybody's going to say here, and it's Jonnu Smith. Josh, talk about how much you love Jonnu Smith.
I'm gonna keep this super short. A- for me, and it's only because of Jonnu Smith. Everyone else can go suck an egg. That's it. End of story. Mic drop.
Anthony, how are you going to follow that up?
Yeah, I gave them a B. Jonnu didn't raise it as quite. I wanted to give them an A in a desperate way because I love Jonnu Smith. I love exactly the season he had. I thought was as close to perfection as we've seen from a tight end in a while, and maybe that's just because we haven't had a good tight end in a while. But man, Jillian Hill and Durham Smythe and the Jody Forston experiment were awful. So I give him a B.
Keith, go ahead.
Yeah, I gave him a B minus. In much the same way that the rest of the running back room drug down Devon Achane, the rest of this tight end room drags down Jonnu Smith. Jonnu Smith was great this season. We all, none of us can say enough great things about him. But Julian Hill got a jockstrap from somebody every week. Durham Smythe got holding calls and got drops, and you know what? The average gets drugged down by these guys. Next season I want to see Jonnu back, and I want to see a solid tight end too who can maybe catch a ball and run with it a little bit, and not get a holding call on every single one of Devon Achane's long runs. That's what I'd like to see from my tight end room, and I don't think I'm asking too much, right? Shouldn't be asking too much. That's not asking. I'm not asking for the moon and the stars here. So yeah, B minus.
You're kind of asking a lot, I think.
I'm gonna keep it short.
I have
brief.
a gut feeling based on Skylar Thompson being on the team for 3 years. I have a feeling Jillian Hill will be
It's
back.
Jillian, get it right. Yeah.
I'm gonna keep it brief. Jonnu Smith is the only reason I'm gonna give this a C. Everybody
Jesus.
else was absolutely.
How can you guys?
God,
And I have to ask you guys, how can you guys be so down on a room that had a player that broke positional historic records on this team? That is just
the other guys broke
two-thirds of
records
that
in the
room.
opposite direction.
Yeah, that's exactly why.
2/3 of that room was terrible, Josh.
And that's a good point, Josh. Like Jonnu Smith put up those numbers, and I'm still that down on the room. That tells you how bad everybody else was.
If we were talking just starters, it's an A+.
I mean, that's all I did because
Yeah.
the other ones aren't worth practice squad positions. So I
Just
literally
speed
looked
this
at the
up.
tight end room and said, Johnny Smith, and that's it. A-. Okay, next.
To speed this up a little bit, I'm just going to combine the entire offensive line because honestly, at a certain point, I mean, what is there to really say? Josh, what grade did you give the offensive line?
D+ for me, sir. I thought there were some bright spots, right? I thought Armstead played the most games he's played as a Miami Dolphins this season, and when he was in, he was probably a top 3 player on this team. I mean, he still has it when he's in the game, right? But the question is always when. I thought Aaron Brewer killed it at center this year. I was hyped for him when we signed him. I mean, yeah, he had some snap issues. Do you blame him? He had 5 different quarterbacks this year, right? I'm not going to hold that against him. And he did what he was supposed to. He came in. He was great at peeling off. He was great at downfield blocking. I mean, it's exactly what you want in this scheme for a center. And Austin Jackson and Patrick Paul kind of rounded out the group, right? I mean, those were kind of the 4 bright spots. Everyone else, all of our guards were horrible. I mean, absolutely atrocious. And our backups are not feasible NFL backups in the NFL. They are, our number 2 or number 3, I guess in this case, offensive tackle really should be our number, our number 5 or number 6. Our starting guard in Robert Jones, fine if we want to keep him, but he should be our 6th or 7th guy, right? Break glass in case of emergency, but he's starting, right? And that's a whole nother conversation, which we had on last show about personnel decisions and so on and so forth. But yeah, no, D+ for me.
Anthony, what about you?
I went with a C+ for this unit. I thought when Armstead, Brewer, and Austin Jackson were all in there, they did enough to carry the guards, which were atrocious this year. But it's okay, guys, because we're more worried about the offensive linemen. Sorry, I have to keep repeating it to myself. It's like a horrible nightmare that I keep reliving over and over again. Yeah, I did want to point out that as he says that, right, I'm looking in for research for this show. Isaiah Wynn, Kendall Lamb, Robert Jones, Liam Eichenberg. Those are 4 re-signings, boys. That means these 4 were on the team last year when the offensive line was also not very good. And then we've re-signed all 4 of them, and then the GM goes, "Yeah, guys, I'm not that worried about the offensive line." Okay, well, you should have been because it stunk. I give him a C+ just because those 3, I thought those 3 were good. I thought Austin Jackson was playing the best that he's ever played. Teron Armstead.
Patrick Paul looked really good too. When he was
Patrick Paul, I did
Yeah.
up it for him as well. Patrick Paul, in his minimal time that we got to see him, he looked like he could fill in when Armstead decides to hang it up, which could be as soon as next year. So get ready, bud.
Keith, what about you?
I gave it a C-, and I agree with a lot of what Anthony said. I mean, Austin Jackson was great this year. Aaron Brewer, I'm not as high on Aaron Brewer as you guys are. I think Aaron Brewer got taken advantage of in the passing game, especially a lot. Teron Armstead, really good when he was in there. But again, and I know he played more games for the Dolphins this season than he ever has. I don't love a left tackle where you have to plan on the fact that he's not going to be there for multiple games a season. I'm ready to move on from that, honestly. And I loved Teron Armstead his time here. But I'm ready to move on from a left tackle where it's like, well, he's probably going to miss 5 or 6 games a season, and we just have to live with that. That has to be a way of life with us. Like, why? Why do we have to live with the fact that our left tackle is going to miss time? If that's not acceptable for me with Tua, it's not going to be acceptable with me with Teron Armstead. And that's my stance moving forward. I want these guys in there. I want these guys playing. So I'm ready to move on, bring Patrick Paul in there, who showed some promise. And like you guys said, the guards were bad. And Liam Eichenberg was functional, I guess, at the beginning of the season with Austin Jackson next to him. Once Austin Jackson went out, Liam Eichenberg's play fell off a freaking cliff. And I'm ready to move on. And Robert Jones, always a replacement level player. He was never a starting guard in this league. And, that largely played itself out this season. Robert Jones didn't look good. He looks like a guy who can give you a spot start every now and then. Ask him to start 17 games, he's going to be exposed, and that's exactly what happened. C-.
As for me, I'm going to give it a D+. A lot of this has to do with the tackle room, has to do with Teron Armstead being excellent when he's on the field, has to do with Austin Jackson being really good when he's on the field. And when he wasn't on the field, we saw what happened to the run game. Getting into some of the other stuff real quick, Kendall Lamb, I actually think he was a pretty reliable swing tackle for us, especially considering he wasn't supposed to play as much as he did. So props to him. I do wish your retirement year went a little better for you as a backup player, but at least he got some reps in Miami. The less I say about Jackson Carman, better. So I'm just going to ignore
Thought
that.
he existed.
Chiefs annihilated him after his first ever game. He got
Yeah.
destroyed.
He got my
Well,
jock strap.
Yep.
But in my defense, he was really bad.
Oh,
he
it
was
was.
really bad.
It would have made more sense not to just put him just play a man down.
Yeah.
Patrick Paul showed promise, I think. I still have some issues when it comes to his speed. He kind of looked a little lost at times, but overall, he has the tools and he was asked to do a lot this year that I don't think we were really expecting him to do. So I'm more than impressed with what he's got. The guard positions were absolutely atrocious. I would give them an F. Like if it was just separate there. You guys said it. Robert Jones, Liam Mockenberg are not starters. Lester Cotton, who is the backup guard, is not even. I mean, I kind of get it as developmental guard. You know, he's got the size for it. He's got the strength, but we don't have the talent for it. And lastly, Aaron Brewer. I'm very high on Aaron Brewer. I thought he had an exceptional season,
Mhm.
but
agree.
I do agree, Keith. I think he did struggle a bit in the pass game. I just can't get over him running dudes over. Like it was just really cool. All right, there's no other way to put it.
Well, I want him back, Taylor. I do want Aaron Brewer
Well,
back.
I think we
next
signed
season.
him. He's on a 3-year deal. I think we got him.
Yeah,
Hey,
Yeah.
I'm
and he
all
fits
for
his
it.
scheme. He fits his scheme very, very well, and
And
also he can move so fast to get through
absolutely.
these blocks.
And with better guard play, Aaron Brewer's going to look even better. So
Yes.
you put a couple of NFL caliber guards next to Aaron Brewer, and they'll help him out in the passing game. Aaron Brewer is going to soar. He's going to look amazing.
Mhm.
It's just he was left on an island too often this year by Robert Jones for the most part, and he's not going to win against an Ed Oliver. He's not going to win against a Quentin Williams.
Not by
That's-
himself.
That's
Nope.
not how he's built. That's not how he's designed. But again, if maybe Robert Jones would have given him a hand, he might have stood a shot.
Maybe a handshake.
Anthony, I think you got our combined grades.
Yeah, so combined, guys, we ended up with a C- for the quarterback position, a B- for the running back position, a D+ for our very expensive wide receiver room, a B for the tight ends, and a C- for the offensive line, which I'm sure fans are going to have a problem with.
I'm
Yeah, it's
kind
a
of
little
happy
high.
with that.
Yeah, that's a little high for me, guys. I mean, I gave him a D. So
Other than the offensive line, I'm kind of happy with those combined grades.
no, they all make sense. The
Yeah.
scary part is our wide receiver is D+, and it's the most expensive position on our entire team. I mean, that's a problem.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So give us your grades down in the chat, in the comments below. We would love to hear what you guys think. Why are we extremely wrong about these grades, and what is the actual grade that you would give them?
Or extremely right.
Oh, well, maybe we were extremely right. I doubt
I
it.
mean,
Yeah,
no,
when
The
are we
fans
ever
are
wrong,
most
Anthony?
certainly smarter than us. Yeah. The commenters have the one up on us for sure.
Absolutely.